This happened back in the fall of 2016. I live in a very small rural community where everyone knows everyone. The state that I live in allows rifle mule deer buck hunting during the first week of October. Sustenance hunting is very important in the culture of my area. That particular fall, I was lucky enough to have drawn a buck tag. I'd made plans to hunt on my grandmother's farm one evening, and given that I'm a smaller woman, I'd asked my husband to go with me in case I killed something so he could help me pack it out. Unfortunately, he could not go that night due to work obligations. Fine, no problem. I'd hunted on this farm many times by myself, and I knew it like the back of my hand. I strapped on my boots, grabbed my rifle and binoculars, tucked my cell phone into my pocket, and made my way to my Jeep. My grandmother's farm consists of corn bordering an alfalfa field along a river. Between the river and the farm are lines of old growth trees. This is the perfect place to fill a buck tag. I parked my Jeep about a mile upriver from the fields, then began walking along the tree line toward the area where most of the deer had been feeding. At the opposite end of the field, there was a large haystack where all the harvested alfalfa was stored. As I saw it coming into my field of vision, I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I knelt down and viewed the area through my binoculars. I could see a very tall, large man come out from behind the haystack and start walking briskly towards me. I knew for a fact that I was supposed to be the only one hunting this farm on this night, as I had just spoken to my grandmother. Something inside me told me I needed to get out of the area as quickly as I could. I initially tried to turn around and walk back down the trees to my Jeep, but given that I have such short legs, this guy was quickly closing the gap. He was still several hundred yards from me, so I decided to try to cross the river instead, but I found that the river was too muddy and too deep for me to safely cross. I thought my only option was to attempt to get a signal on my cell phone. When the man walked across a small ditch and disappeared from my line of sight, I quickly darted into the corn and kept quiet. I could hear him walking closer and closer. I desperately tried to call my husband. Back then, the closest cell towers were over 30 miles away, and cell service was extremely spotty. I could not connect to my husband or 911. By this point, the man was within 100 yards of me. I could hear him ripping corn out, stomping around, and loudly cussing. "Where the fuck did you go?" he yelled. It was getting dark quickly, and I definitely did not want to be in the dark alone with this man. I watched him for a few minutes and was able to determine that he did not have a gun. After weighing my options, I decided to step out and see if I could de-escalate the situation, as I work in healthcare and work with mentally unstable people all the time. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the corn. "Hi, I'm sorry if I interrupted your hunt. I didn't mean to cause you any harm," I said with a sweet smile on my face. I made sure there were at least 80 yards between us. His eyes locked with mine, and it was obvious there was something wrong with this man. He stood about 6'5" tall. His clothes were absolutely filthy, stained with what appeared to be his own waste and sweat. His shirt was torn and had dried blood on it. His face was crooked as if he had had a stroke prior, and he slurred his words. "There you fucking are," he yelled. He reached down and grabbed a massive stick. I'm talking a stick at least 5 feet long. He could have easily killed me with it. I stood my ground, grabbed my rifle from my back, and pointed it at him. He dropped the stick. We looked at each other for a second, then he began yelling, "Do you know whose farm you're on?" I said, "Yes, this is my grandmother's farm. I've hunted on it my whole life." The veins began to pop out of his head. "No, this is not. My wife is hunting in this cornfield and you ruined it. Because of you, she missed a huge buck, you stupid bitch." He became so enraged and started making strange growling sounds and started spitting everywhere. I was running through the options in my head at this point when he suddenly started to lunge at me. I turned the safety off my rifle and shouted, "Stop! I will shoot if I have to." He froze in his tracks and just stared at me for about 30 seconds before dropping the stick. He grunted loudly, with his eyes darting around. "Listen, I don't want to have to do something we will both regret. I'm very sorry I ruined your hunt. If you turn around and walk away from me, I will leave," I said calmly. I could see him thinking hard about what to do next until he finally mumbled, "Fine," and turned around, stomping back towards the haystack. My heart was about to beat out of my chest. I was not about to turn my back on this man, though. I watched until he walked a safe distance away, and then I darted back into the corn. I thought back on how he said I spooked a massive buck and ruined his wife's hunt. It doesn't make any sense. I had a good view of the whole field, and there were no deer present. I took out my binoculars to observe him. I watched him tramp over to the haystack and then get into a small 2-door white car nearby. He quickly peeled out of the haystack lot. I was able to catch that the car had California license plates, but I couldn't make out the license plate number. I live nowhere near California. He took off down the road alone. No one else was in that vehicle. I ran back to my Jeep and locked myself in. I sped home as fast as I could and told my husband what happened. I had never seen this man in my life, and neither had my husband, based on the description. We live in a community of about 200 people. Born and raised here, we know everyone. I called our local sheriff, who came out and took a statement. I took the sheriff to the haystack where the man had been parked, and we found a knife lying on the ground. Of course, nothing could be done as I was not able to get a plate number or a name from the man. To this day, I still have no idea what the man's intentions were, but I can guess a few. It's been 8 years, and I've never seen this man again. From then on, I decided I'd always be hunting with a buddy.